Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Roberto Veloso, and I'm the chair of the Arundel County Human Relations Commission. This is a special meeting of the Arundel County Human Relations Commission, where we will be hosting a presentation by one of our community allies on conflict resolution, reflective listening, and community response to crisis. Before we begin, though, for those in the audience that are not familiar with the Human Relations Commission, the Commission is part of the Anne Arundel County government. It was created for the purpose of promoting and enhancing the ability of all Anne Arundel County residents to pursue their lives free of discrimination. To accomplish this goal, the Human Relations Commission has been charged with the mandate to enforce the Anne Arundel County Fair Housing Law and work towards the elimination of discrimination in the county. If you believe you have been a victim of discrimination in housing or wish to bring some other matter relating to discrimination in Anne Arundel County to the Commission's attention, please contact us using the contact information on the Human Relations Commission webpage of the Anne Arundel County government website. Now, let me turn the floor over to Ms. Jocelyn Julian, the Director of the Mediation Center in the Anne Arundel County State's Attorney's Office, who will be leading the presentation this evening. Jocelyn?
Thank you, Roberto. Appreciate that. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Jocelyn Julian. I'm the Director and Mediator for the State's Attorney's Office Mediation Center. Welcome to Healthy Dialogues presentation, which will be covering mediation and conflict resolution, reflective listening, and community response to crisis. Joining me this evening are Chris Chappelle and Darlene Gamble, volunteer mediators for the Anne Arundel Conflict Resolution Center, Catherine Gray, clinical director with the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency, and Lieutenant Stephen Thomas with the Anne Arundel County Police. We are pleased to present programs in Anne Arundel County that offer help for individuals in conflict and crisis. We are covering various different venues, but tonight we're going to be discussing how to have a healthy dialogue. If you have any questions, by the way, during our presentation, we invite you to use the chat form to submit your questions. Please let us know to whom you wish to address your question. We have left ample time at the end of our presentation to allow for a response. Let me begin by talking about mediation and conflict resolution. It's the process of bringing together two or more people involved in a dispute. We do that in an effort to work toward an equitable resolution. The conflict can stem from familial, community, workplace dispute. Trained mediators serve as a neutral to help guide the conversation amongst the disputing party. At the Mediation Center in the Office of the State's Attorney, we began this program back in 1983 to create a mediation program that offers solutions for victims and offenders in a confidential and safe setting without the necessity of court involvement. Misdemeanor criminal cases are referred to the center by a number of resources. It can be the screening unit in the State's Attorney's Office, victim witness advocates, assistant state's attorneys, judges, the Department of Juvenile Services, defense attorneys, police, complainants, and defendants. Now, the variety of types of cases that we mediate can stem from trespass, telephone misuse, destruction of property, minor types of criminal charges that involve family, neighbor to neighbor, co-workers, etc. And they result oftentimes in criminal misdemeanor charges. Some cases are mediated on the day of trial or within a few weeks of the date of referral. The judges in Anne Arundel County are very supportive of this program and may defer prosecution to allow mediation to take place. The role of mediator is to actively listen to the participants while staying absolutely neutral. That's key. The mediator assists the participants to understand, how did the dispute come about? What can we do to explore ways in which the problem can be resolved? An active listener, the mediator, must fully concentrate on what's being said, understand what's being said and respond, and then remember what's being said. Once a case is referred, the mediator reviews the case to determine whether it is appropriate for mediation, and if it is, The parties are offered an opportunity to mediate. Now, mediation is voluntary for all parties. We find that it doesn't benefit the participants, and nor is their involvement open and receptive if we mandate that they mediate. If the parties do reach a resolution, the mediator helps them craft a mutually agreeable mediation agreement, which is recommended to the assistant state's attorneys assigned to the case. The assistant state's attorney would then alert the presiding judge that the parties reached an agreement and render their recommendations for disposition of the case. And the judge would then hand down their final say on the matter. Now, as part of a mediation agreement, a mediation participant may need to seek assistance for such things as drug and alcohol abuse, anger management, or co-parenting. The Mediation Center works with agencies within our wonderful community to provide an up-to-date resource list for those individuals in need. Our goal is to help reduce recidivism of criminal cases in the court system and foster a healthier environment. Oftentimes, conflict can arise in a community or in a family that may not rise to the level of criminal charges. The Arundel Conflict Resolution Center, or AACRC, which began in 1993, offers mediation, facilitation, and community conferencing services to individuals and groups in conflict. These services are free of charge to the residents of Anne Arundel County. They also offer training and workshops in mediation, conflict resolution, and anger management. Chris Chappell and Darlene Gamble are volunteer mediators with Anne Arundel Conflict Resolution Center. Chris began as a volunteer mediator in 2016 and currently sits on AACRC's board of directors. Now we will see a presentation prepared and delivered by Chris Chappell that offers an introduction to mediation and conflict resolution and a view into what mediation looks like at the table.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Can help. Some conflicts are between two people or involve small groups of people. For example, partners, parents or exes, neighbors, co-workers, or for these situations, you can schedule a mediation session. Well, how does that work? Well, you call the center and a staff person will set up a mediation session between the people involved.
When you're in a conflict with someone, one of the ways to resolve the conflict is in mediation. In mediation, the mediator is trained to help people talk freely and clearly so that they can understand each other and see the other person's point of view. Mediation is voluntary. The mediator is neutral, and it's a confidential process. The mediation is voluntary in that the parties must choose to be there unless it's a court-ordered process. The mediator is a neutral person who will not give legal advice or take sides or offer opinions. The session is confidential. The mediator will not tell anyone what was said or done in a mediation session, not even a judge, except in limited circumstances where the law requires it. The participants are generally free to repeat what was said or what happened unless the law or the contract to participate in mediation prevents or limits what parties can disclose and to whom. Before the mediation starts, the mediator will clearly explain confidentiality as well as any exceptions to confidentiality so that everyone understands the guidelines for the conversation. Not all mediators have the same training or do the same things, but all mediators make sure that people have an opportunity to speak, to reach an agreement if they choose to agree. Now, the mediation here is just getting started. Let's take a look.
These people are impossible. I can't deal with them. Everything was great until they moved in. Now their dog just craps all over my yard. Their juvenile delinquent kid paints this on my garage. You can't talk sense to these folks. They're crazy.
In mediation, the mediator will use a tool we call reflection. And that way, the mediator will restate to the party who's talking, whether it be all those emotions and values, or also state the content that the mediator might feel important at the time. The person who's not speaking will then have an opportunity to hear the information in a different way.
There's been a lot of change in your world since Pete moved in. Sounds like there's a dog that's defecating in your yard. You've had some problems with the garage, and you say that their child who's a delinquent, as you say, is spray painting the garage. You're pretty angry about all this. It's been hard to communicate.
I'll show you, you stuck-up snob. You think you're so high and mighty with your fancy lawn and your big house. And you reported my son to the cops when all he did was act up a little bit because you rag on him all the time for coming into your yard. And you better get that damn tree off my yard or I'm going to call the cops myself.
There's a lot between you. You're really angry about the tree down in your yard.
Yeah, I am.
Your child's had the cops called on them.
Yeah.
You're feeling judged and misunderstood.
Yeah.
Did you see the mediator use the tool and technique of reflective listening to help the parties talk to each other? They have an opportunity to hear each other, say what they have to say. And as reflective listening is used, they hear the information from a neutral person in a way that helps them hear it, not from the person with whom they have a conflict. As the mediation continues to unfold, the mediator may engage in other techniques that are helpful during that mediation session. Perhaps they'll summarize where the parties are, or help them focus in a different way, continue the conversation. All of these tools help the parties reach an agreement if they choose to do so. There are many ways of engaging in constructive dialogue to help people. Let's see what the participants are up to now.
Fred, I hear you saying that property maintenance is really important to you.
Oh, very, very important. And it was great until Dumbo moved in over here.
And Pete, it's been really important to you to have direct communications with your neighbor.
Well, we've got to work something out. We can't go on like this.
No, we can't.
You had a tree down, and you've had some problems with the neighbor's dog. Was there anything else?
Well, he's got to stop calling the cops.
Are there any other topics do you two want to bring up today?
That's plenty.
No, I think if we work on that, that's pretty good.
The mediator has helped Fred and Pete identify issues that they might not have been aware of before discussion. As the conversation continues to unfold, they each hear the other person's perspective and start engaging in joint problem solving. I mean, they're neighbors. They're still going to have to continue to communicate long after the mediation has concluded. Joint problem solving allows us to build bridges and improve relationships. Our neighbors, Fred and Pete, have so many options to solve their conflict besides simply filing a case in court. As you've seen in this brief video of mediation, settlement conferencing, collaborative process, and community conferencing, the idea of facing the person with whom you have a disagreement.
What can you do if the other person won't go to mediation? For those situations, you can try conflict coaching. Conflict coaching is a one-on-one conversation between you and a trained mediator. That conversation will help you identify outcomes you're looking for, ways you can work toward that outcome, and ways to communicate. Another situation may be conflict between groups of people. For example, homeowner association and residents, management and staff at a workplace, school or community groups. In these situations, large group facilitations are effective. But how does a large group facilitation work? For large group facilitations, first the staff person speaks to each person involved in the conflict and identifies the topics of conflict. Then folks gather either in person or virtually with two mediators present, and the group members themselves come up with ideas for how to resolve. Are you looking for ways to achieve justice without court judgment or verdict? The center can help with that. Sometimes you might want a way to hold a person accountable for breaking a law without resulting in that person having a criminal record, especially if young people or first offenders are involved. In that case, you can try community. Community conferencing helps create an agreement to foster reconciliation and repair damage when a crime has been committed. Those impacted gather to determine what should be done. An agreement is written up, and to avoid charges, the offender must follow through. Day of trial mediation is available in civil cases in the district court. Instead of going before the judge, the parties can agree to meet with a mediator. The mediators will help the parties discuss their situation and look for solutions that are mutually agreeable. If they find a solution, they will write the agreement up. So how can you get started if you want to try mediation? The first thing to do is call the center. The phone number is listed below. When you call in, a staff member will gather information from you and contact the other people involved. A mutual agreeable time will be chosen. Here are some key things to remember about mediation. Mediation is voluntary. Anyone involved can end the session at any time, and you won't have to agree to anything that you don't want to agree to. The mediators are neutral. They don't judge.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Next, we'll hear from Darlene Gamble, a volunteer mediator also with AACRC and chair of the Outreach Committee. Darlene's presentation will focus on reflective listening in a mediation setting. Darlene, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And also, I want you all to consider when to use reflective listening. Now that the holidays are coming up and you're home a lot, these are some skills that you can use pretty much anywhere to help minimize conflict. My name is Darlene Gamble, and I am with the Arundel Conflict Resolution Center. Today, we're going to be talking about reflective listening tips. I want you to take a few minutes and look at this picture and tell me, what do you see? When you look at this picture, You may see a horse or you may see a frog. What I want you to take away from this is what conflict looks like. Two people can come to the same situation but have two totally different opinions about what the situation is about. In this instance, it's a horse, it's a frog. How can you communicate what you see to the other person without arguing about it, but sharing your insight as to what it is you see? And when you come to a conflict, everybody has an opinion, but today we're going to talk about reflective listening and how you can listen to the other person and try to figure out what it is they're focusing on. Reflective listening is a way to allow someone to express themselves and tell you what it is that they feel, what they want, and what's important to them. And there are different ways to approach reflective listening, but a few things you need to think about is how you say things. You need to listen to what's being said and not think in your head how you're going to argue your point. Just listen to what the other person is saying so that you can reflect back or share what you think you heard the person say. So we have a few reflections that we use from time to time. One of them is you can repeat exactly what you heard the person say, or you can repeat back what you think they're saying and what you think they feel and what you think they want. We may miss the mark, but that's okay. But at least you're letting them know that you're trying to understand what it is that's important to them, what they're feeling at that moment, and what you think they just shared with you that's important to them. When you're doing reflective listening, do not include your opinion. Statements like you always say, or you did say, or something like that's not true. That's not a part of reflective listening. That's being positional. So what we want to do is open the space to allow them to share what it is they're trying to communicate to us. When we do reflective listening, we have what's called distancing phrases. And what that is put space between you and the situation so that you don't feel attacked by what's being shared. The phrases that you can use, and I want you to start thinking about these so that you can incorporate them into your dialogue when it comes to conflict. Reflective listening, you would say to the person after they've shared with you what their opinion of the situation is, you would say, what I think I hear you saying is, and then you share with them what you think you heard them say, what you think they're feeling, and what you think is important to them. You can also say, it sounds like, and then again, you go through what you think they said, what's important to them, and what they're feeling. You can also say a phrase like, are you saying? Or you can use a phrase that says, I hear you saying. And if you look at these phrases or listen to these phrases, it gives space for open communication. It's not positional and it's not locking a person out. You're trying to open up space so that you can give that person an opportunity to share with you as you listen what it is they're trying to communicate to you. When we do reflective listening, we also have what is called check-in phrases. And the check-in phrases gives us a time to pause and make sure before we get too far along in the discussion that everybody's on the same page. So after someone shares with you what their conflict is or what their concerns are, you would use a phrase after you say, I think I heard you say, when you go through what it is you think they said, what you think they were feeling, and what you think is important to them, then you would say, is that right? To bring clarity around what you think is being communicated. You're asking, did I get that right? And then you want to know, is that what you were saying? So that at this point, if you missed a bit of what was being communicated, now is the time to talk about it so that you don't get too far into the discussion and you get things all mixed up. So you do these check-in phrases periodically to make sure everybody's on the same page. Now, I am going to do a role play, and I want you all to listen to what's being said and think about what I'm feeling, think about what's important to me, and think about what it is I'm trying to communicate. So let's begin. I think everybody around here should be more responsible. I don't live in this community alone, but when I come home, I'm the only person cleaning up the trash on the sidewalks and in the streets. Do we live in a pig pen community? I work all day and still have to come home and pick up trash outside my house, your house, and several other neighbors' homes. I'm cleaning up stuff I didn't mess up. Everyone in our community is grown and old enough to know better. Evidently, y'all weren't raised right. I'll be darned if my kids learn these bad habits. I teach my children to clean up after themselves and not leave trash outside. Unless I come home and play the bad cop, nothing gets done in our community. Now, when we think about the rant that you just heard, what do you think this person wants? How are they feeling? And what do you think they value? Let's hear some of your ideas and suggestions. So, listening to the script, we can say to the individual who just had shared their experience, it sounds like you're feeling fed up and that cooperation is important to you when it comes to neighborhood cleanup. Is that right? That's what we call a reflection. We've identified what we think the person is feeling. We identify what we think a value is for them, and we've identified what we think is important to them, or what we call a topic. So as you're listening to someone share with you, these are the things you want to try to filter through your mind. What are they feeling? What do they value with what they're saying? And then what is important to them about what it is they're saying? Now, I want you to reflect back on the role play and think of some other feeling words. You could have said, sounds like there was anger, sounds like there was some, we did use fed up. The person could be feeling overworked, discouraged, sad. So there are lots of feelings that could be pulled out of what was said, and it all depends on the individual to say, yes, that's how I felt, or they may even tell you, no, I didn't feel sad. I felt overwhelmed or something like that. So even if they disagree with the terms that you use, at least they're communicating to you what it is they felt. And I want you to also think about values. Can you identify any values that the person shared in their reflection, in their role play? What was important to them? Responsibility, neatness, cleanliness, fairness. There are lots of values that were important to this individual. So when you think about what was being shared, it wasn't that they were attacking anyone, it's what they were feeling and going through, because these are the things that are important to them. Neatness is important, cleanliness is important, fairness is important to them. So they're trying to express that and not be attacked by the way they feel. Now, I want you to give it a try and identify what you think the person was feeling, what you think they value, and then what's important to them. What's a topic that you can walk away with from that reflection? Today, you've learned a new tool, reflective listening. And what I want you to walk away with is thinking of ways you can incorporate this into your tool bag of tips when it comes to working with someone when there's a conflict of interest, a different opinion. Instead of arguing with them or trying to solve a problem for them. Listen to the individual, allow them to share with you their point of view, and then reflect back to them what you think you've heard, what you think they value, what you think they're feeling. Because initially and ultimately, a person just wants to feel that they're being heard. So reflective listening is a tool that you can use from now until forever. So add it to your toolbox of communication tips, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Darlene. Very good. As we navigate through this very, very difficult time, it's important to know that there is help for those suffering and experiencing personal crises. Next, we will hear from Catherine Gray, Clinical Director with the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency, and Lieutenant Stephen Thomas with the Anne Arundel County Police to present community response to crisis. Catherine, Steve?
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And thank you so much for having us tonight. So I think what Jocelyn says is so correct. We are experiencing absolutely unprecedented times right now, which also means that our families and our individuals in our communities are experiencing unprecedented stress. Not just the levels of stress that they're feeling, but also the length of time that they're feeling that stress. This isn't an isolated event. The pandemic has been going on for several months now. We've had social unrest, we've had political unrest. You know, everything seems to be coming at us all at once. And what we're finding is that folks in our community here in Anne Arundel County are experiencing not just stress, but they don't know where to go to get help. So where do you go? Well, Steve and I are going to talk to you a little bit about the crisis response system. Although it's called the crisis response system, we don't only respond to crisis. Our crisis response system, we operate 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. This is a collaboration between the police department and the mental health agency. It's also a partnership with the health department and with our community providers. So what are the parts of our system? So the hub of our system really is our warm line. And it's important to recognize that it's not a hotline, it is a warm line. We don't only respond to crisis calls, but we also respond to calls for individuals seeking resources. So if you don't know where to call, I'm going to give you the number, 410-768-5522. Again, it's 24/7, 365. And that's where you can actually start your where you're going to find behavioral health services. Behavioral health services are both the mental health and the substance use services. You can find support there from the individuals that are answering the calls. You can find your resources. We can get you help you get set up with a clinic appointment. So there's really no wrong call here. But for those folks who are experiencing a crisis, they also have the ability to call into the warm line and request a mobile crisis team. So a mobile crisis team consists of 2 clinicians. They are trained in crisis intervention skills. They wear uniforms. I'm actually wearing the uniform now. And the uniform is actually the opposite colors of, if you notice, Steve's wearing Carolina blue and dark blue, and I'm wearing dark blue and Carolina blue. So it really is intended to be seamless. We do come in vehicles to wherever the individual is in the community. You do not have to come to us. We also respond on police radios. So all of our clinicians have police radios that they're trained to use, and the police can call if they interact with an individual who's experiencing some sort of mental health crisis, possibly a homeless individual. Instead of arresting the individual, they can call the clinicians. The clinicians will come, will assess the individual, and then we can get the individual connected to services. It's much better divert people from detention when they haven't really either committed a crime or the crime is directly related to their mental illness. Mobile crisis is also available 24/7, 365. I assume most people know about Safe Stations. Safe Stations started April 20th, 2017. And Safe Stations is a partnership with county police, the county fire department, state's attorney's office, the health departments, and both of our hospitals. And an individual can walk into any police station or any fire station and say that they are experiencing a substance use issue and they need to get help. Our Safe Stations folks will come out to wherever they are, at the fire station or the police station. It's important to know that we also will come out to the community. If somebody calls into the warm line, we will come out and do a safe station assessment wherever the individual is. And then we connect them to the appropriate level of substance use care that they need, whether it's inpatient, whether it's a recovery house, whether it's support groups. Another piece of our crisis system is care coordination, and this is open to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Our goal with crisis is always to stabilize and get the person into long-term community care. So one of the challenges a lot of our folks have is they don't have ID, they don't have a birth certificate, they don't have insurance. We can help them get all of those things, and then we can get them connected to the long-term care. Care coordination is a very, very short-term service, typically no more than 30 days, and then we connect to long-term behavioral health services or housing services. And then sort of the creme de la creme of our system, and one of the most unique partnerships that we have, is our crisis intervention team. And I'm going to have Steve talk not only about the crisis intervention team, which is one police officer from the police department and one clinician from our system. One of the unique things is the police are actually housed with us. So they get fully embrace our social worky culture, which is really what we need. So Steve, if you want to talk about the CIT team and then also the community supports that CIT provides.
Sure, absolutely. I'm really proud of what we do. And I know nationwide there's been a huge outcry asking for more mental health and policing, and we've done that here. We have completely integrated mental health and policing. The key is something Catherine said. Traditionally, most police departments have brought mental health clinicians into the police department. What our model here in Anne Arundel County is we've taken the police officers and implemented them in the crisis response in the mental health agency. And it may not seem like it's a big difference, but it really is a big difference. We respond to all traumatic incidents. And the key to that is, how do we provide support to the community after a traumatic incident? And it's all part of our police department community model of crime prevention as well as community service. When you look at most offenders, we address what is the core issue to that offense. And usually it's growing up in a atmosphere and a family or a community where there's a lot of trauma, there's mental illness. And when you start looking at the ACE of how many ACEs a child has when they commit an offense, what we're able to do is deflect children from the criminal justice system and provide them mental health supports through the mental health agency. When we're able to do that, we have a 2% recidivism. That's 2% of the time that child commits another offense in the community within the next year. We're able to help a lot of children and families. And I'm going to sort of go through all the different things that we do. We work with the court system in assisting people when they're in crisis. When someone has been emergency petitioned, which is when a police officer takes them to the hospital for mental health treatment because they're in crisis and have an ongoing mental health issue, or they just have crisis at that time, they're a danger to themselves or others, and they are charged with an offense or have a criminal warrant. As far as I know, in Maryland, we're the only department and maybe the only nation that does this. We follow that person, we contact where they're an inpatient. When they're discharged from inpatient, our team, officer clinician, go and we meet with them. So we still have a warrant to be served. We walk them through the process as a police officer. We really treat them as gently as we can. The key is the partnership with the clinician. The clinician makes sure that there is a safety plan for them upon being released by the criminal justice system. So if we take them to the courthouse or to central booking now and the commissioner releases them, they're not just walking out the door without any services. We make sure there's a safety plan for them in place, that they're not going to be homeless. There's a safe place for them to go, providing those Maslowian needs. As far as I know, we have had no one that we've helped in those circumstances be recharged with a crime. We follow them. Now, we're following about 90 people at this time through all the different avenues that we help them. Sometimes and I apologize for sort of being disorganized with this, but sometimes it's calls from a mobile crisis team. When patrol calls a mobile crisis team out, the mobile crisis team recognizes, hey, this person needs additional services. Can CIT follow them? And we will work with them, coordinate their care to make sure they're getting the appropriate mental health services. Another thing we respond to is, it's really unique, is when there's a threat in a school or to the community. The CIT team will respond, but we're not doing it in a criminal justice atmosphere. We're doing it in a crisis response. The whole key is, what is that mental health crisis that's led to that threat being made? And we're linking them to services to keep the community safe as well as that person is safe. The only time we use the criminal justice system is as a last resort if the person is not receptive to help from the behavioral health system. And Safe Stations, which is another, and Safe Stations was based off a program out of Gloucester, Massachusetts called PARI, which is the Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative. And in PARI, the Gloucester Police Department in 2015 opened up the police department and said, anyone with addiction, come to us and we'll help you get to recovery. We took it a step farther, because in there it was just the one station in Gloucester, Massachusetts. We have not only every firehouse, every police station in the county, but our goal is also to eliminate any barriers for the person to get into treatment. If someone has an outstanding warrant, they cannot get into inpatient treatment. If they have a court date within 30 days, they cannot get into inpatient treatment. What we do is work with the public defender's office, the state's attorney's office, and the courts. And I'd like to say we use common sense. We've had no one come in with a murder warrant or a first degree assault for a shooting or something like that. But they're traditional offenses, petty offenses someone who has addiction is committing: theft, trespassing, and things like that. We work with the court system. We get the person in treatment first. We have the warrant rescinded, and the judges do that. And then after the person completes treatment, we take them to court. And we're there to testify on their recovery and how well they're doing in their recovery, not on the initial implications of their case. And a lot of the people coming in have violation of probation warrants, where they're not doing what they need to take care of themselves. And all we are doing is to help and giving them hope to get to that point of their recovery. And think how powerful it is when you have someone that was running from the police because of their addiction, and the police are actually driving them to treatment. and then taking them to court, not in handcuffs, but as a social support, as being there as a friend, and then testifying on their behalf of their recovery. And I think that's why our numbers are so high. I call it, and you can say that, and there are people that say that there's an outcry against police, but there's still a lot of people that respect police, and that us being their social support means a lot. And again, it's another part of our community policing is when we're there for help families and the community in their time of need. When really bad things happen, traumatic incidents happen, we're there, and it's universal. We're there to help the officers as well as the community. Because I can assure you, when you look at an officer and say, what happened to that 22-year-old go-lucky kid that I knew coming out of the police academy, and now he's a hardened 45-year-old? What's the trauma that officers go to and respond to? We treat the community as we treat the officers. And it's sort of, when you look at it, we expect the officers to treat the community the same way we treat them. And we look after their mental health. We follow the principles of CISM, which is critical incident stress management, of how can we help people after traumatic incidents. And I know it carries a lot with that because the officers are very responsive when we're there to help them. And they're calling us, they're calling the mobile crisis teams to help the community when they're there for major incidents. I don't know, Catherine, is there other areas you want me to?
No, but I do want to point out, so getting a CIT officer to come work with us, it's actually a pretty coveted spot. It's something they have to interview for. It's not something you're promoted to. It really has to be the right person, the right fit. Because again, they're coming in from their police culture into our mental health culture, which is pretty drastically different. So the officers that we have are fully committed to providing a level of support that is beyond the police department. And I think that is so unique with CIT.
So, Catherine, we have a question about, is there one crisis team sufficient for a county as large as ours?
Oh,
So if I can go into the training and I'll talk about it. So we have, it expands on what Catherine is saying. So CIT is it's a program out of Memphis, Tennessee. In 1988, the Memphis police unjustly killed a mentally ill person. At that time, they recognized that there was a problem. There was a huge community outcry. The University of Memphis partnered with the police department, and they came up and developed the CIT training, which is 40 hours hands-on training. I'd like to think, and I'm going to pat us on the back, include myself, Catherine, my partner, Jen, and the entire crisis system, that we run a great school. So pre-pandemic, we were running 4 schools a year, every 3 months. We limit it to 22 to 24 people because we want it to be intimate education. We want it to, and it is. We do site visits. We have consumers coming in, people with mental illness coming in and teaching us about their life experiences. We develop empathy. We learn about all the different mental illnesses. And a large part of it is teaching de-escalation. The last day is all de-escalation with skills, doing hands-on exercises. To attend the training, there's never a voluntold person. It is completely voluntary. And with that is we put out a training announcement and they ask if they can attend the class. And the key to that is because they have the passion to help. So I'm going to backtrack. In 2015, and again, this is from what I've been told, we were the first major police department in the nation, and I was told that from Maryland Mental Health First Aid, to train every officer in mental health first aid, which is an 8-hour nationwide certification. It's actually an international course that was developed in Australia first. And it's 8 hours teaching about anxiety, about depression, about psychosis, about substance abuse, and about trauma, and recognizing warning signs and symptoms, and how to link people to appropriate help. That was the start for our police department, because we did that in 2015. We started the CIT program in 2014. That's when we really changed the culture of the department to being helpful to people and not hurtful, to link people to appropriate services. Then we started with the CIT program, running our own schools. We actually now, we met with NSA yesterday. The National Security Agency actually wants to start a CIT program and attend our school when we start them again. The United States Secret Service actually attends our school. Unfortunately, we have not had a school since February. CIT International is asked to suspend all training because they do not want it to be a checkbox, which neither do we. It has to be intimate training. It can't be done on Zoom. We go out and we do site visits, and you have to have that personal interaction with people with mental illness so that the officers get a full understanding. We have to do site visits. The most powerful class in site visit is we go to Pathways. We spend 3 hours in Pathways, half the class at a time, in a group intervention in their adventure therapy class. And it is unbelievable. When you go there, you can't tell the patients from the officers. And the officers learn from the patients in recovery, but also the patients in recovery learn from the officers. They learn that the officers are people and that they're humans too. So part of this is all that culture of helping that we have in the partnership, which is more of the partnership, is integration of mental health with the mental health and law enforcement at crisis response. Now, to get back to the question, we actually have 141 officers trained in CIT. We have another 20 plus some trained that we trained from Annapolis City. In addition to both departments, of every officer has been trained in mental health first aid. In our unit, we currently have myself, I have a sergeant, and we have 4 corporals assigned to CIT. Due to schools being closed, we have another 5 SROs who are also CIT trained. A few of them are also CISM trained, which is another 30 hours in how to help people after trauma, which is critical illness stress management in the unit. So there's many days when, if it's a really busy day, we actually split up mobile teams and attach them to officers and run more teams. So at a minimum at a day, we have 3 CIT teams, but we've actually created up to 5, 6, 7 teams. The day of the Annapolis Capitol Gazette shooting, I have no idea how many teams we created, because we were taking and partnering clinicians to those CIT trained, especially CIT CISM trained officers, to help that day, because that was the overwhelming call for us for the amount of people that we were helping and trying to help that day.
And then on the mobile crisis team side, which are the 2 clinicians, we actually operate 4 teams, overlapping teams during the day, plus an overnight. So a total of 5 teams on any given day.
So the questions coming in: how can one assure that if a distress call is placed, a mobile team can be appointed?
So
one of the things, and this is happening. So one of the things that's happening now is people can call into our warm line, which is 410-768-5522, and request assistance from a mobile crisis team. Now, they're going to do an assessment to determine the appropriateness for a mobile crisis team. And why I say that: mobile crisis teams, they're not police officers. In many instances, the evaluation will be done and say, this person, they're suicidal. They said they have weapons. We're really not going to send the social worker out there because it's not safe. But what will happen is they'll be explained, hey, we're going to send you help, but we're going to send you one of our specially trained CIT officers. And again, we're dressed in complementing uniforms, and they're explained that we are specially trained to help. We had that this morning at 6 o'clock this morning. A young man called into the warm line asking for help because he was having suicidal ideation. And actually, I went in, it was before hours. I went with the clinician and we met him and we had a great outcome. And actually, I drove him to an appointment, urgent care appointment, to see a psychiatrist today. Think how important that is in community policing. Now, this young man's a very nice young man. He's made some, in his younger days, made some bad decisions, but it doesn't make him a bad person. But think how powerful it is when a police officer is taking him to get him the treatment that he's not only needs, he's asking for his own benefit.
The whole philosophy behind this is not really to turn police work on its head, but to understand where the individual is coming from and not always say, well, it's a crime. Steve's right, there's a lot of reasons why people commit crimes. Mental health and substance use are some of those reasons. So when that happens in the community and when our police interact with those folks, it's not an automatic arrest. It's now, hey, let's get mobile out here to do an assessment. Let's see what we can do to help so we don't continue to have interactions with this individual. So this individual can go on to get into treatment and to be a productive member of society.
Good. Thank you, Catherine and Steve. And thank you to the members of the audience. We've shared a lot of valuable information tonight, and it looks like there's a few other questions in the chat line that I'd like to read and direct, if that's okay. Going back up, I see a question from Lakeisha H. And I think this would be for the AACRC team, Chris and Darlene. It says, I received mediation training maybe 4 to 5 years ago. Does AACRC provide training for those who are interested? How long are the training sessions? Chris and Darlene?
Yes, Anne Arundel Conflict Resolution Center does provide training, and it's free. It's about, I think, 45 to 48 hours for what's called basic mediation training. And the training could be at any center in Maryland. So don't think it's just going to be in Annapolis. It could be at any center in Maryland. And once you finish the training, you would have to sign up as an apprentice, which means you would do volunteer work around the center. And you would also observe mediation so that you would see how it's done in practice. And then you would be able to co-mediate with seasoned mediators after a while.
Thank you, Darlene.
Mm-hmm.
Now I see another question popping up, and I'm going to ask Catherine and Steve. I'm not sure if this was addressed previously. It says from Lakeisha H. I had a neighbor whose daughter was under mental distress. She called 911 and the EMTs came, latched her to a gurney. She was admitted into a hospital. Is that normal procedure if you don't call the warm line?
So it's really tough with not knowing all the information. So normally if someone's in mental distress, police officers are going to be dispatched with the fire department. With that, we're going to try to use the most appropriate means to get person to the hospital. So going actually with an ambulance is a softer approach, and usually I've done it numerous times with people that if you have an elderly person with dementia that has to be emergency petitioned, it could be because of dementia, it could be because of another mental illness. One comes to mind where I had a lady who was elderly, onset of dementia, as well as she had psychosis. And because of that, she was a threat, not just to herself, to her husband, who was elderly. And when I say elderly, they were in their late 80s. Really didn't want to take her, and she was actually fighting me as a 90 and pretty big person, to fighting me as almost 90-year-old lady who weighed 90 pounds. Do we really want to take her in handcuffs to the hospital? So we actually called the fire department to ask the fire department to transport her in the bed. Number one priority we have in every case we go to is the safety of the community as well as the consumer that we're there to help with. What do we have to do to keep everyone safe? Unfortunately, that means at times if someone is violent, they're going to have to be restrained. And that's what it sounds like may have happened in this case. If they were being restrained to the gurney, it was to protect her from herself, as well as to protect the fire department if she was violent and trying to kick or hit them. So it's really, we need more information, but we do work really well with the fire department in those cases. And that's when we're taking someone, and again, it's when we're committing them to the emergency room on the emergency petition to be evaluated for if they are suffering from a mental illness or crisis and are a danger to themselves or others.
It's always preferable for us to have somebody go to the hospital voluntarily. But when that doesn't happen, we would do an emergency petition, and clinicians cannot transport for an EP. It does have to be police or an ambulance.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Steve. Are there any other questions that anybody else would care to ask?
Yeah, I'd like to, if I could.
Certainly, yes.
I think you said something, Steve, about you have coordinated uniforms or something. Mm-hmm. Do you go, with a gun at your hip and that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. I'm a sworn police officer, so I have my departmental issued firearm on at all times.
So, what's the difference in your uniform than a regular uniform?
This is my uniform I'm wearing right now.
I can't see it other than it's blue.
Stand up, Stephen, model it for us.
I have a standing desk, so I'm lowering my piece.
They're called soft uniforms, so they're not the traditional metal badge and ribbons on the one side and sort of that starchy. They're polos. They're just collared polo shirts, and then I call them cargo pants, but they are not called cargo pants. I'm sorry, Steve.
Some people call them BD. Some people would call them BDUs, but it's people are very receptive to when we show up, and it is a soft uniform. Okay. And even the color being the soft baby.
Now, one other thing that I used to work for FEMA, and FEMA is acronym heaven. And I've noticed that you guys do it as well. CIT, pathways, SROs, SISM, safe stations, all words, phrases that the uninitiated don't have a clue what you're talking about, or at least I don't. And I just wondered if, you'd ever thought about avoiding the use of acronyms when you're, in this kind of a situation.
So you're absolutely correct. So the SRO is a school resource officer. So we have a great partnership with the Board of Education. One of the other things, and if I have time, I'll expand on some of the things I know no one else does. We, for children involved in the criminal justice system and in the public school system, and this was pre-pandemic, we had a monthly meeting with student services at the Board of Ed, along with to have a full picture of how can we help children that are already in the criminal justice system. And we're sort of the middle of that, working so that everyone's on the same page, working together. We actually now, during the pandemic, student services is reaching out to us for children that they're having a hard time locating and having a hard time that aren't really involved in school the way they should with virtual learning. One of our SROs who's CIT trained, he's in our unit, is actually going out and doing door knocks and checking on the children. And I don't mean door knocks as in a hard police manner. I mean door knocks as a friend. You talk about officer friendly. No one's more officer friendly than Chris Linsenbigler. And if you saw any of the videos with Mo Gaba last year, Chris is the SRO at Lindale, the school resource officer. But it's having that connection with the children. Some of the other acronyms we use is critical incident stress management, which is CISM, CISM. That's sort of the basis of everything we do. And it's an
Tell me
expanded
what
version of
does it
psychological
stand for again?
critical incident stress management.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually an expanded version of psychological first aid. So we're actually using psychological first aid as a means of community policing.
Okay.
Steve, do you guys have a portion or a page on the county police website? I mean, it seems like you have a lot of resources for the community. And my sense is that the more that the community knows about what CIT can do, the better. So I was wondering if you had a portion on the website. And Alana also posted a question about how can the community reach the mental health agency and or the crisis intervention team to schedule training or community presentations about their services?
So you can actually call the warm line directly, same number, and let them know what you need and we'll come out.
Now, Catherine, is that the 410-768-5522?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. And now, how can the community reach, this is another question, how can the community reach the mental health agency under the crisis intervention team to schedule training and or community presentations about your services?
So the best way to do that is to call the warm line directly, the 410-768-5522. And depending on what kind of training you want, we can most definitely accommodate.
Okay.
And
All
we've
right.
done community trainings for mental health first aid.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, Roberto asked a question, which I may have missed the answer to. Is there any place on the website, on the police website that outlines the services available?
That's a good question.
Actually, I don't know, to tell you the truth. I can inquire, but I don't know. I'm not even sure if it's on the mental health agency's website.
So it is on our website. And I know our crisis number is on the county website, but I don't know if it's on the police website.
I don't know. But I'll look into it.
I think you really need to make the community aware that you're there. I mean, I think that, I don't know how busy the warm line is, but I think there's a lot of need out there for the services that you guys are offering. So.
And might I throw in that at the end of this presentation, I'm going to put up our telephone numbers, our contact information, and anybody who has any further questions, please feel free to email us, make contact, call us if necessary, and then we can answer more questions.
Jocelyn, Eugene has a question. I think he has got his hand up. Eugene, go ahead. Can you unmute?
Yes, I did. The question that was raised about putting this on the website, and it goes back to the meeting that I had with Chief Altamare and back a few months ago. And one of the things that the police department desperately needs is beefing up their communications effort. They can't do it. They're like a one-armed paper hanger. They don't have enough resources. So one of the things that we could do would be to suggest that there be funding available so that these services could be better coordinated through a communications approach, because I don't think that they have the resources right now to do that. That's my take on it.
Can I just do one quick recognition? So CIT is international. There are a host of countries around the world that do this type of policing, not quite the way that we do. And earlier this year, Anne Arundel County's CIT team was named the International CIT Team of the Year. And this is actually our second recognition. We previously had Corporal Marcus named our International CIT Police Officer of the Year. So our tiny little county is getting a lot of recognition for how we are integrating a behavioral health approach with our police department.
And congratulations. That's good news. I know we're all kind
Thank
of
you.
We'd like to
applauding.
see this spread quickly.
Yes.
We need it.
Yes, very good. Very good. Thank you all. We really appreciate all the presenters. I know, and I know Roberto's said it, but I had a question, and you may have answered it, but I'm not quite clear. And it was as relates to the crisis intervention CIT team and de-escalation. I know that you, as Eugene said, there's so many services, as well as Roberto, that the community may not really honestly be aware of. And so besides the communication aspect, I just wanted to get clarity on what kind of training does CIT offer as relates to de-escalation to the community? Is that only offered to police and law enforcement, or is it to the community at large? I just wanted to make sure that everyone was, at least I'm on the same page and understanding. Thank you.
We actually the 8-hour mental health first aid class is actually a community mental health class. Now there is a public safety version that we taught to officers, and we have taught, and we do teach it to the community when there's a request and people want it. I'm going to tell you the downfall of the class is that it's 8 hours. The positive is it's 8 hours. It's a lot of information. It can also be extremely emotional. And why I say that, when we're teaching the class, if someone in the class has a family member that is with a mental health issue, they start reflecting on that. And it can be very emotional for them, especially when we start talking about suicide.
Right. I understand, and thank you for that.
So we try to break it up into 2 4-hour sections.
Class.
Now we have had community members.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's 8-hour. We try to break it into 2 4-hour sessions because of the amount of information and how emotional it can be. So we do that. We have had some citizens attend the 40-hour CIT training, but usually it's like our police chaplains have been there. But we try to reserve those spots for the officers so that we can get the officers trained. Another thing is we have 141 officers trained throughout the department. So the goal is, and we teach this in the training, that when a call comes out, that officer with the passion to help, who's had the training to help, will self-deploy to that call and patrol. So they may not be the one dispatched. Ideally, it is that they are the one dispatched. If they're not, they hear the call and say, hey, I want to help. I have the skills to help, and they're going to respond and help. And then, and this was pre-pandemic, we had a lot of those patrolmen trained in CIT would fill in for a few days, occasionally in our unit, just to help keep their skills up, to keep in contact with the clinicians. And it was a win-win for everyone because we were actually getting additional staffing to help with that.
The reason I ask, I have a strong
the pandemic has sort of put an end.
Oops, sorry. The reason I ask, because I know not just me, but I know that there are others who've expressed a strong interest in maybe attending that 8-hour class. Do they call just to confirm that warm number again, that to try to see what the next date would be, or all of that?
Actually, for that, if you want to
call and ask for me.
Steve, for the mental health first aid, do you want them to go through Dana?
I'm sorry, I'm having internet. I think I'm having Wi-Fi issues.
So if you want to schedule a mental health first aid training, we actually have a training coordinator who helps us set up all of our trainings. Her name is Dana, and I can put her number in the chat box. And we actually, on our website, do a whole bunch of different trainings. We've just done a whole series on behavioral health in older adults. We do a lot of resilience trainings. Steve and I are both certified in trauma-informed care for the criminal justice system. So we have a lot of certified trainers within our agency on a whole host of different topics. So I would definitely, yes, that's Dana's number.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure my fat fingers typed it correctly. Yes.
To what degree can you provide bilingual services? Do you have any staff that are bilingual that can help Spanish-speaking individuals on the warm line?
We do. We have that both in mobile crisis and on the warm line, but I will tell you, it is not nearly where it needs to be. We are actively recruiting bilingual clinicians and bilingual individuals, call takers.
Who, speaking as a citizen, who in the county government should I contact about how that needs to be an issue that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later?
They're very aware.
Okay.
We address it all the time.
Okay. Okay. Good.
It's we have the ability to do it, but as our Spanish-speaking population grows, we don't have enough Spanish-speaking individuals within our crisis system. We can use the language line, but it is way better to have somebody who speaks, who is in front of you in your native tongue.
Okay.
When you say you're actively seeking, and I know I just heard the discussion just a few seconds ago, is there any particular number if a person or a member of here on the commission or person on the community who may be viewing the recording, if they know of someone who may be interested or have the skill sets that we're talking about, is there a main number or something that they can call?
Actually, if you want to call me at the 410-222-7858, I would greatly appreciate it.
7858. I'm gonna put it in the chat box so I won't forget. Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Any other questions?
So 7858 was also the number for Dana?
Yep. She's about 10 feet away from me.
Okay.
Good. I also wanted to share that if anyone is interested in obtaining this evening's PowerPoint presentations from AACRC, we will be sharing them with Alana Dennis and Roberto Veloso afterwards. And with that, I'm going to share our contact information. I'm just going to see if I can bring it up. Okay. Can everybody see that? Or is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Well, we would like to thank everyone for attending this evening's presentation. And we would also, the presenters here would like to thank everyone who was responsible for ensuring that the logistics of putting on this live and recorded presentation happened safely and successfully, I should say. I'd also like to send out a big thank you to Lana Dennis with the Office of the County Executive, who took on the task of creating and leading the Healthy Dialogues Forum, without whom this endeavor would not be possible. And also to County Executive Stuart Pittman for giving us the platform for Healthy Dialogues. Thank you, and back to Roberta.
Thank you so much for coming to make this presentation tonight. I want to really express my appreciation not only for the work that the Crisis Intervention Team is doing, that the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency is doing, that you're doing, Jocelyn, but also I can't forget, I keep taking them almost for granted, Anne Arundel County Conflict Resolution Center. You folks are such a tremendous community resource. And I know that every opportunity the Human Relations Commission has to help resolve a problem through mediation, we're referring them over to you. And we are eternally grateful for your willingness to work with us and help the community in this way. But thank you all for sharing this information. I hope you will continue to present the information regarding these services to the community at every opportunity that you get, because I feel it's really important, and it's people need to know that you're there and that these tools and these services and these resources are out there, and it's important for everybody in the county to know. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your efforts putting this presentation together, and thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight. We'll go ahead and put this presentation up on our website on the YouTube page, and we'll endeavor to see if we can get the slides up on there also. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you everybody for your time and attention. And let's keep doing the important work that we're doing and try to make, like the county executive likes to say, let's make it the best place for all. And let's keep working on that. So thank you all, and have a good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Please.